Goed. Weer eens who took the effort on this Monday morning, this workday, to come to this event, to participate, and also to support those who are here today. Baie welkom, a warm word of welcome also to everyone who's watching this on YouTube. We are currently live on AfriForum's YouTube channel, and of course, this video would of course be available afterwards. So please, if you are watching, I will be keeping an eye on some of the comments. So if you have questions or if you want to participate in this discussion, please comment, and perhaps we can discuss your view in this discussion as well. So very recently, President Cyril Ramaphosa went to the United States, particularly to New York, and he spoke about what's happening in South Africa. And as we all know by now, he made a comment on an international platform that there is no killing of farmers or white farmers in South Africa, to use his words. What we also know is that Statistics South Africa has recently published that in last year there were about 7.5% of people in South Africa say that they have experienced crime. A more recent study was published by the UNISA Bureau of Market Research, which found that during the same time frame, 70% of farmers in South Africa said that they experienced crime. Now, the big shock about the current debate is that there are people who actively argue that there is no such thing as farm murders, or that it isn't a problem at all. And we find that people who argue this, that their voices become increasingly vocal. And it is something that we are particularly concerned about. So what I will do now, before I introduce the panel, is I will give what I believe is the strongest argument as to why farm attacks should not be prioritized, and the strongest argument as to why we believe it should be a priority crime. So the main argument that we frequently hear is that last year, although the statistics vary, that there were about 74 farm murders, while at the same time in South Africa there were about 20,000 murders in general. And the argument then is, how do you believe that a crime like this should be prioritized if the total amount of people who have been murdered is so small in comparison to the bigger amount of people? And people who argue this do not consider the nature of statistics and the size of the group that we are talking about. And I've asked several people who argue this what their view on rhino poaching is, and whether they would argue that the total amount of rhinos poached in the last year in South Africa is fairly small in comparison to the total amount of all animals that were poached. And the response then is immediately no, but the poaching of rhinos should be a priority, and it should be stopped. The problem is that the debate about statistics on farm attacks becomes very difficult because, firstly, we do not know exactly how many commercial farmers there are in South Africa, and secondly, it's not only commercial farmers who could potentially be victims of farm attacks. Roughly speaking, there are about 32,000 commercial farmers in South Africa, and there's been some attempts to calculate the farmer murder rate. In other words, the ratio at which not people are being murdered on farms, but the ratio at which farmers are being murdered. The reason why it's hard to calculate the ratio at which all farm murders take place is because anybody can be a potential victim of a farm attack. There's been various calculations, and without going into the details, the biggest point that people do not, or many people do not take cognizance of in this debate, when an attempt is made to compare the fact that 35 out of 100,000 people on average is murdered in South Africa per year, the biggest fact that people do not consider is that 80% of these murders in South Africa are social fabric crimes. In other words, 80% of all murders in South Africa are, for example, crimes that are the result of a drunken brawl or domestic violence or something to that effect. Well, those crimes are by definition largely or mostly excluded from what constitutes a farm attack. So if you want to do a comparison, you need to consider the fact that the majority of murders in South Africa are not social fabric crimes, which makes the difference between the national murder rate and the farmer murder rate much bigger. The more important point, however, is that farm murders is a very unique crime phenomenon, and it's a basic policing principle that a unique crime phenomenon needs to be responded to with a unique counter strategy. Those AfriForum and others who argue with AfriForum that farm murders should be declared and treated as a priority crime do not argue such because we believe that farmers are special or deserving of special treatment. On the contrary, the argument is that farmers are deserving of equal treatment because it's generally accepted by the South African government that unique crimes need to be dealt with by unique counter strategies. And that is why the South African government would acknowledge that rhino poaching is a priority crime, copper cable theft is a priority crime, violence against women and children is a priority crime, gang-related violence is a priority crime. All these crimes are very unique and they have very unique consequences. And that is why they are priority crimes. And we support the fact that those crimes are priority crimes. On the other hand, the moment when you start talking about farm murders, the response is usually that it shouldn't be a priority because farmers aren't special. That is discriminatory practice. It's not a plea. To call for a prioritizing of farm murders is not a call for special treatment. It is a call for equal treatment. That said, we are not here to discuss the statistics. We are here to discuss the stories. And with me today on this panel, we have 3 people whose lives have been affected in a very serious way by farm attacks. Now, I should say, just before we kick off, that the 4 of us who are here today are all Afrikaans, and we will be speaking in our second language. We believe it's important to do this discussion in English because we have a lot of people abroad who are interested in what is happening in South Africa, and especially because the recent comment by President Cyril Ramaphosa was made in the United States. And we would like for people who watch this video to share this video, to like this video, to comment below this video, and particularly to share this video with people who they know who are abroad who might be interested in what is happening in South Africa. My name is Ernst Roots. I am Deputy CEO of AfriForum, and the prioritizing of farm murders is one of our core campaigns. With me on this panel next to me is Darlene Miller. Darlene was attacked, Darlene and her husband Johnny, who's also in the audience today. They were attacked in 2017, last year. They both survived. Johnny, I believe, survived through a miracle where he was shot in the head and the bullet came in his head and exited at the back, and he survived, and we are fortunate to have Johnny with us here today. Then also we have Willem Stafflier, who will be sharing his story with us. Willem's wife, Vanessa, was murdered in a farm attack in 2012, and his 2 children were on the scene when this happened, and they have a particularly unique story that Willem will also share with us. And then also we have Claudia van Wyk, who also has a very unique story. Claudia has been, or at least Claudia's family, have been victims of these attacks not once, but repeatedly. Claudia's uncle and aunt were attacked in 2012. They were murdered in a farm attack. And more recently, her father, Sarel van Rensburg, was also attacked, whose brother had already been murdered, and he was then also murdered in a farm attack in 2014. So let's start the discussion. Perhaps to start with you, Darlene, if you can tell us, just take us briefly, what happened that night when you were attacked?
On the Saturday evening, the 23rd of September, we went to friends in town for we had supper with them. And we stayed quite late, so we got home basically on the 24th of September at about 12:30 in the evening, in the night. As we arrived on the farm, there was nothing wrong. The dogs came to the gate, we opened the gate, we went in. They were quite happy to see us. So we went inside the house, and Johnny and I and the 2 children, each had his or her own thing to do. And after about 10 minutes or so, I said to Johnny, he must go pull the vehicles into the garage so that we can close the doors and go to bed. And he went outside, and the next moment I heard a terrible sound. And as I looked out the door between the kitchen and the scullery, I saw Johnny push somebody out the scullery door outside. And I immediately realized there was something wrong. And there was only one thought that came to mind, and that was to get my revolver. So I ran to the safe. On my way to the safe, I heard 2 more gunshots. Got my gun out of the safe, my revolver out of the safe, and I was busy getting it out of its holster when this guy stood next to me with a pistol in his hands. And then I knew I was also in trouble because I couldn't shoot. The revolver was still in the holster. He took the holster from me, and then he said to me, "Where's the money?" I said to him, "We don't have money in the house." And he said to me, "I will shoot you." Now you must remember that I got quite scared then, because I don't think he was trained to handle a gun. And a person who isn't trained in handling a gun is quite dangerous, I think. Then my son came to us, and then this guy said to my son and myself, "Come." And he took us down the passage into my son's room, into the spare bedroom. He looked into both bedrooms. There was nothing that he wanted. So we came all the way back, and he went back to the safe. And as he went to the safe, and he stood there in front, I walked to get the remote of the alarm. Luckily, he didn't see me, and I was able to press the panic button. And as soon as he heard the panic button, he ran. Obviously, there was somebody waiting for him outside, and they left with Johnny's pickup truck. And, that was it. Then I closed the door, and I said to the children, I think that everybody that was there has probably left, or have probably left, but we can't take any chances to go outside, although we knew Johnny was in trouble. And the people from the alarm company phoned. I spoke to them, and as while I was speaking to them, my son phoned, and he was 15 at that stage. He phoned the police from his phone. After that, I phoned my parents-in-law, and I phoned the hospital and the doctor and friends, and so a lot of people then knew about the attack, and help arrived soon.
I remember listening to your story the first time and speaking to Johnny. He said to me that he was almost half conscious at the time, so he was struggling with them, and they shot him in the head, close range.
Yes.
And the bullet, can you maybe just explain what happened to him that evening?
Yes. He was definitely shot at close range. The gun must have been almost next to his head. The bullet entered his head just above his right eye, and it came out here on the left side of his neck. And I mean, obviously he was out of it for a while.
And well, Johnny's sitting here today. He looks like a normal, healthy man, so it's truly a miracle. Can you just take us quickly through what type of damage? So was it just a miracle that he survived, or how did it happen?
No, it's obviously a miracle that he survived, because anybody with a bullet wound through his head, you don't actually expect such a person to survive. And if he or she survives, I mean, obviously you immediately think of brain damage, which he doesn't have. But what did remain is that his left ear is basically deaf. He's lost his sense of taste and smell, and that's about it. Oh, and he's got titanium eye sockets, because they had to rebuild everything on the inside, because it was quite shattered on the inside.
Sure. Willem, if we move to you, your story was, I remember when I wrote the book, Kill the Boer, I'd already met your father-in-law, and I've spoken with him a few times, and your story was one of the most tragic stories in this whole phenomenon, especially given the fact that there were children involved. So in many of these attacks, we find, actually in the majority of the attacks, the victims are elderly people, but not always. Sometimes we find that there's the well-known case of Wilmien Potgieter, who we know of, who was a 2-year-old girl who was murdered. And your story was particularly striking. Your children survived, but can you just give us a brief outline what happened that night?
Well, that night we were it was a Monday night, 30th of April, and I was still busy milking. And my wife took the kids, because they always come there. We milked on the one farm and stayed on another farm. So she took the kids and they went home. It was about 6:30, 5:45. And I tried to phone her between then and about 7:30 when I finished working. She didn't answer, but she never answered the phone, so I didn't really pay any attention to it. And I left the house and I in my pickup and I was driving towards our house. And you go down a gravel road and then you get on the tar road and then you get on another gravel road. And as I'm coming down to the tar road, I could see a bakkie making a U-turn and going back on the tar road. And when I got onto the road, I could see their silhouettes in the road. And I thought, I probably didn't see right. And when I got closer, I could see the two kids. They were 5 and 3 years old at that stage. Luckily, there was old people, if they can take the kids to the farm where I came from where the dairy is, because their grandparents are there. So I was on my way. I went back to our house then.
Just hold on. I hear there's some noise in the. Can we just use the handheld mic just in case?
And I went to my house. When I got there, the gate was closed. Everything looked pretty normal. As I went into the house, there was no break-ins, no doors were broken or nothing. So,
sorry. So you went to the house and you saw the children already outside.
I got the children were far from the house. They started walking back towards me, back to the place where I was working.
What time was that?
It was about 8:15 at night.
Yeah.
It was still already dark. It was April. And when I got to the house, I went inside. You don't know if the guys are still there or if they've left. And when I looked down the hallway, I could see my wife. Could only see the backside because the first shot, they shot her in the neck. But I think that was she must have died on this, immediately. And she was there sitting on her knees, lying against the door frame. And then while she was sitting there, I think they shot her another shot just above the ear. But the first one was in here and it came out the back here at the top. So she was, I think she just fell, but she was on her knees, as I said. Yeah, that was it. I tried to do some CPR on her, but obviously it didn't work. And then I phoned my brother-in-law and I phoned the neighbors. And they started arriving, and my father-in-law and his wife, and the kids, they arrived, and then all the other farmers and people started coming.
It's a terrible story. I'm really sorry to hear that. How do you... So what happened then? You called a few people, because I think people watching this, especially people abroad who aren't used to these type of stories, try to think, how do you react if it's you in that situation? So what were you thinking, and what happened to you in terms of mentally, or what did you do? What happened to you during this whole event?
Yeah, well, obviously you get the fright of your life. Your kids are walking next to the road. I mean, a car could have driven over them or whatever. And obviously there's something wrong. They're not supposed to be there. I know my wife won't let them out. And then my son said, okay, look, she's been shot. So I phoned my brother-in-law first, and then my father-in-law. And then I phoned another guy in our region, who I know he's always busy with the police, and he's got all those contacts. So I phoned him, and I told him what happened, and then obviously he phoned the police and all the guys that came. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that guy I phoned that night, someone in his family were also attacked that night. I'm not sure. But anyway, I phoned him, and I went to the house to see if, on your way there, you're thinking, okay, well, she's been shot, hopefully just in the tummy or in the shoulder or something, and she'll be all right. You can call the ambulance, and you'll carry on from there. But no, she was dead. No.
So I just want to check are we fine with the sound? The other microphones are all still working. Okay, so Willem will continue with the handout, and thank you. Claudia, so to go to you in a sense, want to say we're fortunate that you weren't physically there when this happened, but you've been struck by this more than once. How, you can tell us what happened in those two cases, but also how does it affect you? What do you do when you hear that news? Because I think everyone has thought of that getting that phone call, someone, a loved one telling you that a loved one of yours has been murdered or has been killed. What happens to you? How do you react to that?
Well, I can first start to say that on the morning of the 24th of June, early that morning, my dad phoned me. My dad is not a guy that really gets quickly emotional, but for the first time in my life, he phoned me and he said to me, Floetjie, this was his nickname for me, he said to me, I'm so sorry to tell you, a tremendous, horrific situation happened to his brother and my aunt. 5 intruders came 4:10 in the morning through the guest bathroom, got into the house, they forced and kicked open the main bedroom's door, and my uncle jumped up because of the fright, and as he actually jumped up, they shot him through the arm into his heart, so he died instantly. And then secondly, they pulled off the duvet from my aunt, who was still sleeping, knew that she actually had a pistol of a rifle on her ankle. They took that off, and they shot her once in the hip. That paralyzed her. And then if that was not enough, one cannot understand why. They light cigarettes, and they start burning her with cigarettes. Thereafter, another shot went through her spine, so she was totally paralyzed. They actually shot her 3 times in the body, and then lastly, they shot her through the head. She didn't die at that moment, but while during this, what all this happened is, while this happened, there was American hunters on the farm. They heard the shots, so they immediately ran out, and when they could see, they saw 5 figures of people jumping out of the window. So they rushed to the house, only to find my uncle, Johan, died, and then one of the hunters were a medical doctor. So he assists with my aunt, stabilized her, but then, they got the police and everything, and they airlifted her to the hospital. She died 15 days later. So, you don't know where do you start to say what the effect of these are. And that's only my dad. Only to tell you that in less than 18 months later, the morning I got a phone call saying, we're just sorry to tell you that your dad passed away. Now, if you don't understand, my mother passed away many years ago. So my only family membership is my dad. He spoke to me that evening prior to his death, and he said to me that we have arranged for me to go to the farm, because he said to me, my child, I'm so tired and so shocked to see that you cannot cope with the tragedy and the shock of the things that happened. I want you to come to the farm, to me, where it is safe. There's nothing for you to worry about. Just find yourself again. Just find Claudia again. And I said to him, Daddy, I'm coming on Friday, and I can't wait to see you. The next the next morning, it was, I'm sorry if I get emotional, you don't get all of these things. You learn to bear with it. But it is as brutal as a white shark attack. It comes suddenly, unexpected. But the devastation, you cannot comprehend to start to say what emotionally, physically, financially traumatized and bruised a family can be left. We got the call. My brother came, and on our way to the farm, we got another call saying that my dad was also brutally murdered. Now, people, you cannot believe. We've just actually, in a short while, we got through this thing of my aunt. Then suddenly again, I was going to stay with my dad. Your whole life fall apart. Got into the farm, we actually asked the people, can they just keep my dad? I want to see him. When we got there, I think it was about 80 farmers there with the police. And I rushed into the house where this happened. And when you see your dear family's blood being shedded all over, you can see parts of flesh that's on the step. I've asked him to see, can I have a look at my dad? And they said to me, please don't look at your dad. You're very, very sensitive. And I'll advise you not to go and have a look because his whole body, his whole head has been mutilated. I can tell you, like you can see, nothing can ever be the same. Nothing.
I remember very recently when, well, firstly, let me say this. In 2012, that was before your father was murdered.
Yeah.
We had a protest march against farm murders in Pretoria,
Yeah.
and you participated, and you protested about the fact that your uncle had been murdered.
Yes.
And I remember we did an interview with you, and the video is still on YouTube. I think it's called An
Yes.
Open Letter to Minister Nathi Mthethwa, I think, with many of the victims who participated. So you've already been an activist against farm murders, and then hearing the news that your father was also murdered. And now more recently, after that comment was made by the president in New York, you contacted me and you said to me, we need to do something.
Yes.
What was your reaction when you heard him say that?
We are different nations in this country, and yet we are citizens that are participating in this country. So for us, as citizens of South Africa, you expect that your ambassador, your president, will really go out and be an ambassador for all citizens. And when I found out and saw the clip of our president, Ramaphosa, saying brutally in front of the audience that there is no attack, no white person be murdered, it's like anger raging through your heart, blood pumping, and you get so upset to think, how on earth, Mr. President, and I say it with respect, it is shocking to know that you are the person that needs to represent us, and yet you blatantly ignore the fact that so many people daily been attacked and brutally slandered, murdered, tortured. I think it's time, and that's what I said. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, blood cries out to blood. And I've decided that I will participate again to be the voice. My family cannot speak for themselves, and therefore I will voice out and be the voice for them to say, President Ramaphosa, can you bring back my family? Can you bring back these families that has been murdered, devastated, injured? It is time. And I'm actually saying I'm grateful for the fact that he actually missed and slipped out, because you know why? It is time. My dad used to say, there comes a time in life when the Afrikaans would say, the wiele word omgedraai. The wheels will be turned. The table will turn. You know what? The table has already been turned. The overseas people, the world, is looking into this situation. And I'm actually grateful, in a way. It's shocking, but it's time that the truth and the whole truth been said. And I will keep on voicing this traumatic experience so that there will become pressure on government to assist and to look into the case of farm attacks and murder.
Maybe, Willem, so your family has been, you've had to cope with this tragedy ever since it has happened. And as I said, I knew your father-in-law for a few years now. And you have 2 children that you need to raise. That they are growing up without a mother. What was the reaction in your family when you heard President Ramaphosa say this? Did you have for example, hypothetically sitting around the dinner table discussing this? What was the sentiment, or what were your thoughts?
You know, it's sad actually. We've got a nice country, a beautiful country. It's nice to live here. You don't want to go and live overseas. This is our house. This is our people. This is where we grow up. The guy, President Ramaphosa, makes you feel like, I don't know, he's not fighting for you or protecting you or help to protect you or help to live like a normal person in your own country. The effects of this, I mean, what happened. And the aftershock, you can't believe it. The kids, the things they go through, sounds trigger them. Then you go through the whole process again. It's been 6.5 years already. They still go and see people about it. I mean, the grace is a lot. We can carry on. Lots of people are helping us. But I mean, it's not what you wanted. To hear the president say that, it makes it feel as if it's all in vain. Nobody just cares.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe people can just, if they can really make an effort and really do something to help and to make this country the way it was, and the way we all want it to be.
Can I just ask you, so are you still living in the same house?
No, we live on the same farm, but not in the same house. No, we've moved.
I see. And you have family living on the farm next door who are helping also?
Yes.
So just, you mentioned a bit of it. What's the impact that something like this has on the children? So living on the same farm where this happened in front of them, are they fearful at night? Has it had a long-lasting impact? What was it like?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a long-lasting impact. Like I said, it's 6.5 years. I mean, we still have issues today. Funny things, the cat running into the window at night by accident, and noises, noises they heard that night. If they hear it today, it triggers them. You can see the shock. They don't want to sleep in their own rooms. They want to come and sleep in my room. They don't. It puts you back. I don't know.
Darlene, I want to, maybe first I'll ask you your response to the comment by President Ramaphosa, and then I want to ask you something about the farm.
Yes, it's quite sad. I regard President Ramaphosa as a educated, clever man, and to say such a thing as he did in America, I don't think it was a clever thing to do, because it's actually not the truth. So no, I was very disappointed.
What was interesting for me about your case, and it's actually the case with many people who've been through these attacks, and I think Willem has basically said the same thing now. I went to your house shortly after this happened, shortly after Johnny came back from the hospital, and there's an interview, I did an interview with you that's, I think, also on YouTube. And what really struck me was it was shortly after the incident, and you were speaking about going back to the farm. And you are back on the farm.
Yes.
Because you want to be back on the farm. So, and a lot of people don't understand this. Why is it that you could go through something like this and have an opportunity or the possibility to maybe sell the farm and move to town? Or it might be something worth exploring, but you chose to go back to the farm despite the circumstances. Why is that?
First of all, I mean, the farm is our house. It's home. That's where we live. Johnny is an educated farmer, and that's what he does. He needs to farm. He hasn't been educated in anything else. So, yeah, and with having a dairy, that's a very logical thing to do, because running a dairy and living on another, in town is not practical. That's the one thing. The other thing is, if we probably could have bought a house in town, but that costs money. And me being a teacher and earning a very low salary, you know, it comes down to finances. But we love the farm, and that's where we want to live, and we're happy back on the farm. Yeah.
And what is it like for you now to live on the farm with your children, and you are still in the same house, I assume?
Yes. Yes.
I assume you've had some security upgrades, but in terms of the emotion, the children living there, are they coping? Are they more scared than they were previously? What's the impact?
Yeah, no, we did some security upgrades, which is the logical thing to do. And then when we initially moved back to the farm, especially our daughter, she found it difficult to sleep at night. But it's better now. She's coping and she's happy. What we had to do was we had to get her a remote for the alarm as well, so that she feels in control of something at least. Our son is fine. He was actually fine from the beginning, strangely enough, and we're also doing fine. I must just say that when we are in town and we go back in the evenings, you get a bit nervous. Although there's nothing wrong and nothing has happened ever since, you remain cautious and vigilant. So yeah, it's different to what it used to be. But we carry on with our lives. We're not going to let an incident like that make us stay at home day and night.
Willem, there's something I wanted to ask you, because your family has been in the news after this incident about the story of the perpetrators who, according to the last news reports I saw, they haven't yet been caught, and I think they fled to Swaziland or Lesotho, and there was a whole story about trying to get these people to be delivered to South Africa. Can you just explain to us what happened? Have they been caught to date, or what's the situation now?
Yeah, no, well, it was guys from Lesotho. They worked on the farm. They fled there. The police did go to Lesotho. Something about they can't catch them. I'm not sure why. They've got a deal or something with Lesotho, the police. You know, those thing is, yeah. But the kids ask me every now and then, did they catch that guy? Has that guy been caught? Because I think if they know that guy's been caught and in jail, it will help. You know, they will feel a bit safer. I mean, you can imagine they think that guy's still walking around. He can show up any time again. So yeah.
Yeah. Claudia, what was the situation in terms of have they been caught, the attackers in both cases, or are they currently in prison? So they've been prosecuted
yes,
for that.
Yes, in both cases, they got 25-year life sentence with no jail. So yes, they were all sentenced.
Because I've seen or what we've seen with AfriForum is there's a trend of people complaining about the reaction of the police. And in some cases, people say the police were very effective and they were there immediately. They were quickly on the scene and they assisted. And just a few days later, the perpetrators were caught and they were trialed and they're in prison. And then in other cases, we just find that nothing is being done. And there are many, many stories. One story of a farmer who he was attacked physically, he survived, and his clothes were soaked in blood, and it was confiscated by the police. And then 2 weeks later, when the police officer came back to the farm, the jacket, the blood-soaked jacket, was still in the back of the police car. Sure. So we hear many such stories, and one that particularly struck me was the story of Bernadette Hall, who lives on a farm not far from here, actually, Vogel, and her husband was murdered in an attack, 2010, I think, and she was there. They were both attacked. She was tied up, and David Hall, her husband, was shot. And what was particularly bad about her situation is, firstly, the private security, as is often the case, were on the scene, the local community safety network before the police. The police were there. Eventually, they started they came later. Eventually, they started packing up to leave. And they were then stopped by the neighboring farmers who said to them that there are still evidence lying around. There's still cigarettes and blankets and items filled with blood. They need to confiscate this as forensic evidence. And what happened then, the police came back, they took all of it, and a few weeks later they caught two of the attackers. And Bernadette was called in to go to an identification parade, who I've also heard from many of the victims they find very traumatic to go and to identify the people who's been there. And she identified them. She knew, she said, those two people are the ones who murdered my husband. They were identified, and then there was a trial. And then what happened in the trial is there was no evidence. The police either threw it away or they just lost it. And so there was a trial. These people were charged, but there was no evidence against them. And eventually they were then found not guilty. And there's that double jeopardy principle, of course, in law. You can't be tried twice for the same crime. So once you've been found not guilty, and they come then back with the evidence, they've already been found not guilty. And what Bernadette says is the people are still there. They've been found not guilty. They are still in the area. She still sees them from time to time working on neighboring farms. And I remember she told me that when she drives around in the area, she sees people walking next to the road, she doesn't look at them because she's afraid that it might be them, and she don't want to see them. She doesn't want to make eye contact. And there are many such stories, and everyone is unique. What was your experience with the police? Was it a positive experience, or were you concerned?
No, actually, in our case, it was positive. The police arrived on the scene first, and they were there quite quickly. The culprits have been apprehended. The case hasn't been isn't done and dusted yet. They still awaiting trial, because then they have a lawyer, then they don't, then they have a new lawyer, then they don't, then they get another lawyer. So the case is still ongoing, but they are behind bars.
Yeah. So maybe just from AfriForum's perspective, because we get a lot of questions, and I see there's some comments about that on the live stream, in terms of raising international awareness and what should we do and what shouldn't we do. Just a summary of AfriForum's position. We and us going to the United States earlier this year, and us planning to go again, if we can, early next year. The point is not to get the rest of the world to solve our problems. The point is not to get Donald Trump to fly to South Africa and to do something to stop the farm murders. We must be realistic. And a realistic expectation is not to expect of some other country to come and to solve our problems. But there is also a realistic expectation in terms of what we can achieve through international liaison. And we've seen that to an extent already this year. And that is what we would like, and especially people who are overseas, people watching this, we would like people to talk about this, to speak about this, to get the message out, even if it's only on Facebook or on Twitter or on social media. Because we do find that the more people talk about this, the more this becomes a priority, and the more it becomes an embarrassment for the fact that the South African government is not doing something about this. So the more we can get people who are abroad to talk about this, and especially influencers, especially politicians or presidents or governments taking a stance about what's happening in South Africa, we're not expecting them to solve our problems, but they are helping to save lives by doing this. Because in effect, what they are doing is they are putting pressure on the South African government not to ignore this problem. And it's a message that goes through to all the levels of government. It goes to the national government, provincial, and local as well. And we need to be very thankful for the police officers who are very good and very dedicated in what they are doing. And we've heard many stories of police officers really going out of their way to help people and to make sure that people are brought to justice. But unfortunately, this isn't always the case. And we've heard horrible stories of negligence on the police's side. So just to start rounding off the discussion, in terms of the way forward or the message, a message to send out. So we do know we have people who are abroad and people who are over the world watching this and who will be watching this video. And of course, we'll encourage them to share this. But maybe, Claudia, to start with you, you've said what you think about President Ramaphosa's comment, but what would your message be if there's someone sitting in some state in the USA or somewhere in Europe or anywhere in the world watching this video, trying to think what they should make of what's happening in South Africa? What would your message to them be?
Well, my message firstly will be, it definitely happens. It definitely happens every day. Farm attacks, people being murdered. The crime rate in South Africa is very high. Now, my personal feeling, and I must say to you, it's my personal feeling, I looked at our current situation and I only see tremendous devastation, and we don't have in South Africa a law that is equal punishment enough to give a second thought to any perpetrator. So my personal experience is I think it's time that we maybe perhaps reconsider the death penalty back, because maybe that will be the only key that perpetrators will twice think of just brutally attack, slaughter, and kill people for nothing. I know it's heavy, I know it's very harsh, but you know, killing somebody, murdering him, slaughtering them, that's harsh. So the comparison for me is what will really help. So my voice is maybe we really need to put pressure so we can reconsider perhaps something as harsh as, you know, stopping these perpetrators by just simply killing, by bringing back perhaps the death penalty. And
Willem, what would your message be?
Yeah, you know, like I said, we live here. We don't want to move. We want to live here. We want to live in a country where you can do your thing whenever you want to do it. Crime in this country is out of hand. There's no two ways about it. Things happening every day. People getting murdered, shot, hijacked. Things happen. Everyone is doing just what they want to do. So I don't know. We will have to start doing something that there will be law and order again, proper law and order.
Darlene?
I'm with the other two on this one. At the moment, there is just no deterrent for disobeying the law. And I agree with Claudia. I think the death penalty should be reconsidered. Because these people sometimes, you know, they're out on parole. They've got nothing to lose, so they go and commit a crime. They go to jail again, get parole again, go commit another crime. So it's an ongoing thing, and unfortunately, there are so many people in jail that it is almost impossible to rehabilitate them. If it was possible to rehabilitate them, then the death penalty shouldn't be considered. But I don't think that everybody in jail can be rehabilitated. So, yeah, there must be harsher penalties anyway for committing such terrible crimes.
There's something, some of the people have been discussing this, I want to touch on, and I know that none of you three are political commentators, but people ask about hate speech in South Africa. And when I say hate speech, I don't mean people saying things that are offensive. I'm talking about political rallies and people saying, if you are white and you own a farm, then you are a criminal and you need to be treated as a criminal, and comments like, we're not calling for the slaughter of white people in South Africa, at least for now. We know Julius Malema, who's a very prominent political figure, said that. And people singing songs like kill the boer, kill the farmer, and shoot the boer, and that type of thing. So what's your, maybe Claudia, to start with you, what's your view on that? When people still sing it at times, how do you react, and why do you think that this is problematic?
I think what I want to say firstly is, when you look at our situation in South Africa, there's a lot of lawlessness and intimidation, and therefore people's hands are bound, that they can't really bring justice through to what's needed. So in order, what you are telling me is just rephrase the
No, so the question is your view on people singing, committing hate speech, people singing
yeah.
kill the boer, kill the farmer,
Yeah.
and
But it takes you back what I said about the comment that Ramaphosa said in the UK about there's no farmer tax. You know, if you can stand and literally, blatantly ignore the fact what really is happening, that brings you back to see. But that's why, you know, there's a certain groups of people, they can say something. The minute the roles are changed, when a majority of a minority of a person says something, you know, you're damned for life. And that's bad, because what goes around comes around. What is good for you then must be good for the other person. So we really need a justice system to say what's good for one person and what's bad. You know, we need justice. We need people to say, you know what, we need to stand for something. You must stand for something or you fall for everything. And that's why, because of this lawlessness and this intimidation, you know, they don't have the keys in their hands. There's no authority, really. And maybe perhaps, I don't know, I can just say as a person, perhaps there is no political will to really carry this through and to put emphasis on what's really happening in South Africa because of the intimidation
yeah.
Can I come
that
in?
is so high in South Africa.
You know, you get an estate agent who apparently makes a racist comment, gets 2-year jail sentence. But is a racist comment any harsher than
Calling for people to be murdered.
calling for people to be murdered? I think there should be jail sentences for those things as well.
Willem, your view?
Well, obviously that starts a movement, you know, like if you say something like that, obviously people are going to start believing it, and it's like planting a seed. They're saying something and it's going to grow, it's going to happen.
Destruction that follows.
Yeah, and I think the question we often get is, can we prove that this leads to farm attacks? So if we are really angry about someone singing one settler, one bullet, and we say farm attacks is a problem, can we prove that these people have been murdered as a result of this person singing this song? And the answer to this is, in general terms, no. You can't necessarily prove it unless there's a direct link. But there has been cases where such links has been provided, where people have committed farm murders and have testified that they were influenced by, for example, the singing of Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer at political rallies. And they've testified that singing this song has influenced them to go out and kill people. Now, we could say, but how many of these cases happen? We don't know, because we don't always know everything about the motives of the perpetrators. But what we do know, what we have looked at AfriForum, is we have seen that there seems to be some form of a trend between well-known and highly reported incidents of hate speech by influential politicians, such as the leader of a political party or the president of the country, even in one case, or a prominent youth leader, and farm murders increasing. And there are many examples. One of the well-known cases is Peter Mukaba in 1993 singing Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer. And if you look at the statistics that year, you can see there's a very sharp increase in farm murders after he sang this. And he was then, shortly after that, he was promoted, so to speak. He became a minister in the South African government. So you would think that if you're a politician and you sing songs about murdering people, that you would be punished for that politically. But he was rewarded. And I'm not saying he was promoted as a result, or he got this position as a result of him singing this song. But despite him singing this song, and despite the controversy about this, and despite him then going to at a press conference saying, what I meant was shoot to kill. So he not only sang the song, he then justified singing it at a press conference. And then he even went as far as saying, this is our culture. And then he became a minister after that in the South African government. And there are other cases. A very interesting case is in 2010, the very well-known case of the song called Dubula Ibunu, which is a Zulu song. And if you translate it to English, it means shoot the Boer, which was sung by Julius Malema, again, at various political rallies. And he kept saying he's never going to stop singing this song. And he sang that within the context of saying white people are criminals and they should be treated as such. And in that time, he also went to Zimbabwe, and he said he was inspired by what Robert Mugabe has done. And he was president of the Youth League of the ruling party at the time. And if you look at the numbers, in that year, you can also see the rate at which farmers were murdered were higher after he started, in the month, for example, after he started singing this song. But what was particularly interesting about that year, 2010, was he started singing this in March, 9th of March in 2010, if I recall, and farm murders and farm attacks increased. But what happened then was in June that year, the FIFA World Cup, the Soccer World Cup started, and it was hosted in South Africa. And there's a graph on that in my book as well, but where farm attacks or farm murders just stopped completely for an entire month during the Soccer World Cup, which was, of course, an event where the South African government tried to portray South Africa as a fantastic tourist destination, and people should come to South Africa, and it's a safe country, and all the stories about the crime isn't true. For the whole Soccer World Cup, there was no farm murders. And then you could say, I spoke to a statistician about this recently, who said, yes, but there aren't that many per month, so it might just be an anomaly, it might just be accidental, that incidentally there were no farm murders during the World Cup. But what makes it more interesting or more striking is the fact that during that time, if you evaluate the statements made by the South African government about farm murders, during that decade there were roughly 2 farm attacks every day in South Africa, and about 2 farm murders every week, almost 2 farm murders every week. So despite the fact that it happened in a time frame where there were about 2 farm attacks every day, during the Soccer World Cup, which took place over an entire month, there were 2 farm attacks in total in that entire month, and it wasn't very serious farm attacks. So the point is not to say that someone necessarily gave an instruction that this has to stop. It might be that, a lot of people seem to believe that, but something happened during the Soccer World Cup in 2010. And whatever happened and whatever the contributing factors are, the point is that farm attacks, virtually speaking, stopped in South Africa. Yes, there were 2 during a time frame of 2 months. So there seemed to have been something happening. And the question then is, it's quite clear that there is some form of a tap that you can turn to stop these attacks from happening. The question is, where is that tap? And how do you close that tap? Because it has been done already. And then afterwards, we saw when the World Cup stopped, when it finished, farm attacks and farm murders carried on as if nothing happened. It carried on at the same rate. And that's something that's particularly alarming. And there are other cases as well of people committing hate speech and farm attacks and farm murders increasing. So it is a matter of concern. We have just a few minutes left. Maybe just some closing comments. Darlene, your position on the farm, you intend to remain on the farm. Why is it so important to you? And what's the way forward for you?
Well, if we don't live on the farm, we have to go live with my parents-in-law, and that's not going to happen. No, look, the children also, they love living on the farm. So we just try to be as safe as possible. I just want to add to what Claudia earlier said. It does leave an emotional mark, scar, when you are attacked, and because you always have that at the back of your mind. And I can just say, that night that Johnny was shot, I saw him outside, literally in a pool of blood, and you don't want to see those things, and especially you don't want your children to be exposed to that. And that's why I feel so sorry for Willem. I mean, his children were so small when that happened to them, that they probably will be emotionally scarred for the rest of their lives. But we do love living on the farm, and that's why we live there.
Willem, maybe a closing comment for you. The way forward, will you remain on the farm?
Yeah, no, we'll remain on the farm. That's our life. That's what we love. The kids love it there. It happened. You can't bring it back. You have to try and find a way to carry on and be strong and, help the kids.
Claudia, maybe from you, many people have gone through this. Probably more than 10,000 people have been affected directly by farm attacks or who have been attacked on farms who have survived. And we know of about 2,000 people whose cases we could have verified. I should perhaps, before I give you an opportunity, I just got the latest numbers in this month alone. And remember, today is the 15th, so it's the middle of the month. There's been 14 farm attacks this month. So it's basically one farm attack per day so far. And there's been 5 farm murders in South Africa. So it's one every third day in South Africa in this month so far. Many thousands of people are going through this. What's your message to them?
In general?
Yeah, I think people who've been affected by this, if you could say something to these people who've been attacked, for example, in this past month, if you could give them advice, or what would your view be?
From a personal experience, I can just say that it took me years. It's now 4 years since my own dad died, and then 6 years since my family, my dad and aunt died. Please don't be ashamed to cry out for help. Because I was in a period of time when it happened to us. We didn't have the financial resources. I didn't know I can turn to anybody or an institution. And you really carry that scars and that devastating effect with you, like a death cloud. So my advice will be, please call in for AfriForum to support. They now got all the structures in place, and it's not a city that asks for help. So please do that. And yes, there will be days that you feel you just don't want to wake up. Go through those processes. Don't deny the devastation, and don't deny all the processes to process this. And lastly, be gentle on yourself. It does take a while. And eventually, you learn how to carry that through.
Thank you very much. Maybe just a closing comment. Firstly, thank you very much, Darlene and Willem and Claudia, for speaking and having the courage to talk about this and helping us and helping other victims and people in South Africa who are on farms to spread the message. I think for people watching this, there is something that you can do. Firstly, if you are a victim, if you have been affected by one of these crimes, please contact AfriForum. AfriForum has set up a trauma unit where we've already assisted dozens of families, if not hundreds, who've been affected by these crimes. So please contact us. Please don't try to cope with this alone. And if you know people who've been affected by this, also please contact us. We would like your contact detail. I would like your contact detail. And we would like to make sure that we can assist where we can. If you live in South Africa and you want to know what you can do, I think the most important thing that you can do is to help spread the word. We do know that people who are in South Africa are more up to date with what's happening. They are more informed about the problem. So if you are in South Africa, please make sure that you are informed, that you are up to date about the most recent developments, and please help spread the word. AfriForum is largely engaged in, let's call it, grassroots diplomacy. In other words, to get people on grassroots level in South Africa and across the world to start talking about this and to talk increasingly about this. And you can help, even if it's only on Facebook or Twitter. We've seen that could have a major impact, so please help with that. If you are abroad and you want to know how you can help, there are many ways in which you can help people. I've seen people asking about how can they support AfriForum. There's a website, friendsofafriforum.com, where you can go and support the work that AfriForum is doing. But other than that, also talking about this. And especially if you are in a country that is a democracy, speak to your representatives and ask them to speak out about what's happening in South Africa. We're not expecting of them to solve our problems on our behalf, but if they would only be prepared to speak out about this and to say that they are concerned about this, it would already have a big impact in South Africa. And then lastly, if you are involved in some government, or if you are a representative of some sort for an organization or a government or a political party, and you are abroad, again, we're not expecting of you to solve our problems, but if you can speak out about this on public platforms, I think there's a lot that the rest of the world can learn from what is happening in South Africa, especially in terms of how private or local communities have started developing private security networks to look after their own safety. South Africa is in many ways a perfect case study. So learn from what is happening in South Africa, but also speak out about the crisis in South Africa. And when you get in contact or interact with a representative of the South African government, be it in your own country or when you visit South Africa, ask them about this. And that's the most effective way, I think, that people abroad can help put pressure on what is happening in South Africa. Thank you very much for everyone who participated. Thank you once again to our panelists. Thank you for everyone who came out to this event. And thank you for everyone who watched this video. Please help us spread the message. Please share this video so that we can get the message out. Thank you very much.